Live from Surrey Heath, the Kipper stream.
No, no, no. You don't love me and I know.
Buenos dias and welcome to a new episode of the Kipper stream. Today is the Salsa dancing special. Como te llamas? Ay cariño. Some other Spanish stuff. Let's do this thing. So
You're the only one who dressed for salsa dancing.
I told you, didn't I tell you? This is the
No,
salsa dancing special.
You're the only one who dressed up for it, and you look like a fool. Shame on you. Shame on you.
This, my friend, is what a Puerto Rican gangster looks like. Okay, so let's have none of that.
You look like someone from Mumford and Sons.
You look like a boomer.
I don't know. I don't listen to that.
You look like a boomer on holiday, I'm afraid.
Look, the only boomer here is you, Richard, with your bloody Halifax suit. Okay,
that's Mr. Boomer with a Halifax suit to you.
Okay. So the thing I really wanted to get across in this podcast, obviously, is that salsa dancing is the way forward. Every right-wing person should be salsa dancing because that is the way that's ultimately going to lead you to a prosperous life.
It's true.
A nice, fulfilling family with your nice Spanish girlfriend. You know, none of this Kardashian crap.
That's
like a nice Latina who's going to serve you well, give you, 5 lovely Christian kids, because obviously in Latin America we love being Christian.
I can't live in Brooklyn.
I'd like to remind you all that this is a Christian Minecraft server, so no swearing, please. If you do swear, I will be telling my pastor, and he will be very upset.
Well, that leads me perfectly into you, Richard. Shall I introduce you? You are basicely the YI's foremost expert in Christianity. Am I right?
I am indeed Young Independence's foremost Christian fanatic. That is true.
I guess I could call him the YI pastor.
I am actually the yes. I think that's. Can you message the exec and let them know if they need a pastor for YI?
Homosexuality. Do you believe it's a sin and a man should not lie with another man?
We're going there already. Okay,
you know what? If you want to go like that, then yeah, let's hit back equally hard. Yeah, no, I do disagree with homosexuality, and man shouldn't lie with man. If we're going to hit it like that, I mean,
you just make yourself a mega beamer.
But the thing is, all he did say was a man shouldn't lie with a man like he would a woman. You know, it's not saying you should, put it in a certain place or anything particular. So
I think it's generally implied, because I'm going to assume that all of you good and godly gentlemen here, after marriage, would lay with a woman and do a particular deed.
Well, not me.
I know. Apart from you, Sebastian, but we'll have words with you afterwards.
My only thing with the whole wait till you get married business, it's a great idea and I like it, but the thing is, like, that perfect woman is very hard to find in a sea full of people dressed like fucking Picasso paintings with like bloody flab coming out their torso and, on Snapchat 24/7. It's very difficult these days.
I think then that your solution is to give your life to God and start attending church, because then it means that the only women that you'll be finding will be wholesome Christian GF material who you can live on a farm with and have multiple good Christian children. At least that's what I'm aiming for. Me and my girlfriend get on very, very well. In fact, just today we were in the garden setting up a vegetable plot. It was very pleasant.
Can I just interject there? Multiple wholesome Christian ladies over 70 years old.
under 70. That's the big kicker.
The only reason I go to church is to drink the wine.
Well, I mean, that's a reason for showing up to church.
If alcoholic I actually am.
Well, I prefer to say that I'm not an alcoholic. I'm a drunkard, because alcoholics go to meetings. I live in denial. But I mean, if we're being brutally honest, I'll tell you about one of the reasons why I started going to church. This is long before I was actually a Christian. I started attending a Christian youth group, a local Baptist church, when I was living up in Essex, and the reason for it was my family were doing bad financially. Like, we were facing homelessness. It was a really bad situation. Lots of arguments about money and whatnot. And one of my friends said, "Oh, do you want to get out of the house for a bit?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, I go to this youth group at the local Baptist church, and it's not much to look at, but this girl that you fancy, or you at least used to fancy, is going there." And I was like, "Huh."
So this is what it all boils down to. You just wanted to get a girl.
Well, so this is the thing. I thought I wouldn't mind chasing that again and failing miserably. Like, why not? Once more for old time's sake. And I guess that the long story short of that was it didn't work, but I got Jesus. So I didn't get the girl, but I will live forever. So I'm all right.
Well,
I thought you were going to say the girl that you were chasing after was the one you're with now, but obviously.
Oh no. She's not religious. She's a liberal boomer sort of.
Well, she's not even Christian.
No. See, this is one of the things. We went to it was a Christian youth group, but the only actual Christians there were the youth workers. What it was primarily a group to keep kids off the street on a Friday night, and it works really well.
It's like the Army Cadets, and because that.
Yeah, so the reason I first got wind of the fact that there was that kind of faculty going on, or facility going on, should I say, was I was in the Air Training Corps when I was a teenager. So Mondays and Thursday nights we used to go to the same Baptist church hall and do all our parade drill in the car park.
No.
Were you an Army cadet, Seb? Were you an Army cadet?
I have a very strong hatred towards the ATC, but I will say this.
Wait. Can somebody tell me what the ATC is?
Air Training Corps. The Air Cadets. Adventure, boys. Adventure.
You see, I think it's probably with the Navy.
However,
Navy Cadet.
however, I will say this. I do admire the Air Training Corps for their drill, the marching, because I fucking love their marching.
Well, it's because we're the best at it. We're the best at that. We do everything that the Army cadets do, and we also fly.
You can't do fieldcraft though, because you're shit at it.
That's not true. We do our own fieldcraft, and we're bloody well good at it. But it's because of people like you in the Army cadets that all of the letters that go out to the multiple cadet forces are written for 5-year-olds. They might as well have a colouring in section on the bottom as well.
The problem
when the Army cadets get bored.
When you say you do your own fieldcraft, I went on a Battlefield Live session, outdoor.
All right, this is getting a bit esoteric now. I thought it was meant to be about salsa dancing. Can we please talk about salsa dancing, please?
No.
Regimental pride first.
Outside laser tag with the ATC, ACF versus the ATC, and we fucking sorry. Please forgive
no
me.
Swearing on my Christian Minecraft server.
We actually crashed the ATC, so you're shit at fieldcraft. The only thing you're good at is drill and making sure your boots are shiny.
Right. I'm going to have to talk to my pastor twice because you swore twice, and he's going to be very disappointed.
The problem I have with the Navy cadets is overseamen.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, the Navy cadets, it's a bunch of guys on a boat together with nothing to do. I mean, it's the 21st century. I'm not going to judge anyone. That's not my job. It's the Lord's job to do that.
No homo.
Interestingly enough, well, I'm going to move totally back to salsa dancing, as we should.
That turned out. That went off the rails a little bit.
All right, shut up now. I'm going to talk about salsa.
I'm just going to put a trigger warning on this for the SJWs. We allow individual freedom and liberty.
Unless you're a snowflake.
What's that got to do with salsa?
I think that the biggest thing that we need to point out, though, is that SJWs probably aren't going to be watching the Kipper stream. I mean, for God's sake, most UKIP members won't be watching this. So we are catering to the nichest of niche audience, boys.
Well, there are these left-wing people who do things like right-wing watch and stuff like that. I know the famous one is Jared Holt, but I think he just does Americans.
Oh, I know. I've been on the Unite Against Fascism hit list. I know.
Well, once I get my compensation, which will be £1 million, we will be buying our very own studio.
Oh yeah,
Hey,
definitely.
I like the sound of that.
To be honest, though, I'm not sure if I deserve that much expensive equipment.
No, I meant me.
Yeah,
I would much rather someone really professional like Reese Coombs did it than me. Like
Oh,
with
Reece Coombs, the sexy boy.
all the
Well, then,
Hey.
alternatively, then instead of
So-
getting a Kipper stream office, why don't we just get like a young independence office with a video room, so all the top brass and people like us can, video at our leisure.
That'd be a good idea.
Oh yeah, but we can't use UKIP resources for that, can we? That's a bit taking the piss.
Nah, it'll be fine.
I'm sure Gerard.
we'll get it on tick. It'll be all right.
Anyway, what I was going to say before I was rudely interrupted was, like you had with your Christian thing, where you followed this girl and you found Jesus and it changed your life. I wanted to say that I had a very similar thing with salsa dancing.
Oh yeah.
I first dated this half Colombian girl, and I saw a video of her cousins doing it in the living room. I thought,
Wow.
Dancing. He meant dancing.
dancing, yeah.
Alright.
Funnily enough, I found a place which does it near me.
Oh yeah.
It's called Salsa Experienza for anyone who's interested. The finest salsa dance hall in the whole Surrey, I believe. And when I went there, it was eye-opening experience. I met so many interesting people, mostly girls, of course. And these were much more wholesome girls than the typical girls I was used to meeting, let's say, in Cambly Town Centre, like on the strip or whatever,
It's true. It's true.
Right,
And basically, I think I probably went through a similar experience with you. And funnily enough, for some reason at Salsa, there seems to be a lot of Eastern European girls. And there's something about Eastern European girls. They have a certain, they like to, let's relax. We'll talk to each other. We'll have a conversation. We can talk about interesting things. And we won't just talk about some old shit which was on the telly yesterday.
Oh,
Completely agree.
Comment on that. I know in today's society, you get these girls who think going out in a full face of makeup, having a stuck-up attitude, is going to get them somewhere. But if you do go to these, the Christian groups or
Salsa groups.
Well, just any sort of kind of group that is meant for socializing, you'll find.
Yeah, but it has to be orientated around something specific. It can't just be random.
Oh yeah, I know. It's like I went to a youth cabinet meeting. I used to be part of the youth cabinet for Wigan Council. It was total crap. Didn't have any sort of idea what they were talking about. So I corrected them on many things. However, I did actually meet some decent people who wasn't all up in their phones, who wasn't caring about how much makeup they wore. They didn't have a stuck-up attitude. I could actually have a full-on decent conversation with them about, political affairs and what they like to do in their spare time. Whereas if you try to talk to someone in the town centre or on the high street, they'll just be like, why are you talking to me? Did I talk to me?
Yeah.
And that's the problem that we have.
And this is a message I would like to get across. We might as well give some dating advice while we're on here.
We should set up a dating advice channel after this.
YI dating advice. I can't see anything going wrong with that.
Obviously, I can be the lead of YI dating because it's natural.
I'll deal with all the homosexuality.
You can. Have you ever seen that dating show, Celebs Dating? You can be like the gay guy in the hallway. He's like, "Oh, so we got a lovely date with you today."
I don't know quite what that impression was supposed to be.
Anyway, no. What I was going to say is because I know there are plenty of single YI members. Stop playing Minecraft or whatever the hell these Zoomers are doing these days. What's the latest one? I don't know. TikTok.
It's Fortnite.
Fortnite.
No.
Yeah.
It's not Fortnite anymore. It's that new one, isn't it? It's apparently it's like Fortnite but worse. I don't know what it is. All of the young people are playing it, and I just want them to get off my property and leave me alone to run in peace about the good old days.
Yeah, so that's the message I want to put across: is find something you find interesting and just pursue that to more than you would like. go out of your comfort zone and do stuff like that, because there are actually some nice girls out there if you try hard enough.
It's like with my airsoft group, like, because I left cadets and it was the best time of my life. I didn't want to leave, and I wanted to get back into that sort of thing again. So I joined airsoft, and I've met. I'm part of like one of the like top. I'm in one of the top teams in the whole of the country, and you know, they're just like the nicest people I've ever met. They're not sort of in a technological world. We actually get out and do something.
Yeah,
so it actually goes to show you if you look for it, then obviously it will be there, and yeah, just pursue it like Damien said.
So
I completely agree.
So what?
But it's another point. Too many people are focused on material aspects of life and not.
So you see, the thing about a lot of the girls these days that I find, like just random.
I wouldn't say it's just the girls. I think it's the guys as well. Let's
be
honest, we're living in a materialistic culture now.
I'm just talking purely of what is attractive to me, and guys just aren't attractive to me. So,
well, apart from Sebastian.
Sebastian Cheek, yeah, not
Yeah, I just want to say that sneeze during the referendum debate, man, like slew me. Me and the missus were watching it, and we both fell about laughing. It was the best part of the entire debate. We were so glad you ended up doing it in its own little segment, because we've watched it about 5 times today, and it's just my favorite thing in the whole world.
Anyway, just to finish my point, all I was going to say is I meet so many people these days, and literally they have nothing to say apart from like the most dullest things, and then they sort of expect you to be like the person who makes things entertaining. It's like, no, bitch, you better bring some personality as well.
It's almost as if they don't have a life outside. It's almost as if they don't have a life outside of technology nowadays.
Yeah. But that's the thing. We're all guilty of this to a certain extent, getting wrapped up too much in technology. So I think...
one of the things that I'm very grateful for in my church, because obviously it's more than just meeting up on a Sunday morning. On Monday nights, I do youth work. I'm very, very glad for that ability to be able to work alongside all these wonderful young people. On Tuesday night, we have a home group where we all come together as a smaller part of the wider church community, and we will help each other.
Is it like a Bible study session? But
sometimes it's more like a Bible study session. Other times we just have a period where we pray together, we worship together, and then, you know, if people have got struggles in their own lives, we see what we can do about it, because ultimately we are a family. That's what we're called to be. We're called to be a family, so we look after each other. And for me, for example, I'm about 300 miles away from all of my family, and I feel that keenly on a daily basis. I have this church family around me that I trust like I would trust my own family, and they've never let me down. They always look after me when I'm in struggle and things like that. So I always do my best to make sure I'm there for them as well. And it's been an interesting circumstance.
Are you trying to convert your girlfriend?
Oh, she's already a Christian. I met her through the church.
Oh wait. I thought you said
No. That failed. That was about 6 years ago, my man. No, I've been going out with my girlfriend through the church. I've known her for about 4 years.
Maybe I'm getting confused. Maybe you're converting this girl to UKIP, not Christianity.
Oh, she's already joined UKIP too.
Well, in terms of family,
win-win.
in terms of family, I do the UKIP as my family, because everything that's gone on with me, you know, my family lives in Burnley, my real family, and then my foster family, they was like, well, you should go for it, but then it was your fault for opening yourself up to, you know, your opinion and expressing it, and UKIP has only been the one that has actually, you know, full on supported me, full on backed me, like especially with the donation from YI. No one else would have done that for me except, you know, UKIP. And, you know, if you have something like that in your life, it can actually make a big difference. Like when I left, when I was facing that suspension, I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Kind of thing, because I was thinking more more of financial, because I live on my own. I was thinking about stress, because I already suffer with anxiety and mild depression anyway. And
Gang.
What?
Gang. Don't worry. Trust me. I know.
Well, you're part of a family now, and basically you don't mess with the family, and especially not Don Batten.
I've gotten so much of that support. If I didn't, I would have been in a totally worse place than I am now. And it's great to have that.
I think this is another thing as well about being on the right of politics, is that we consider ourselves a community compared to the left, where
I wouldn't say that so much. I say this because I've done the rounds politically. I've been in the Liberal Democrats, I've been in the Conservatives, and now I'm in UKIP. The Conservatives aren't like that at all. UKIP is the only party I've found that actually has a genuine sense of community, where normal people come together and we look after each other. I've seen it in my branch. I've seen it in the branches across West Cornwall. I've seen it with young independents. I've never been in a youth group, whether it's church related or political, that is so closely knit, where the in-jokes are shared by everybody. And when we all pull together and we lock ranks.
I think you know what,
it's beautiful.
I think you know what that is. The obvious part of that is because we're slightly smaller than the Conservative Party.
True.
Naturally there will be some more integration. But also I think we know what it's like to suffer more than any other people in any other party. And that naturally bonds you closer to each other and want to help each other out.
Every single day. You won't believe how many times I've been called a homophobe by by my mates, but they know I'm gay, but they called me a homophobe for supporting UKIP.
Like, tender irony.
How does that work?
I was going to say, how dare you steal my job?
The only thing I will give credit to the left is they always call me Islamophobes, and I am an Islamophobe, so they are right.
I wouldn't say I'm an Islamophobe, because Islamophobia implies an irrational fear.
Yeah, in the strictest definition, but I like to wear the tag proudly. I'm a proud.
I wouldn't say that I'm an Islamophobe. I mean, I freely admit that my major issue with Islam is theological. So I disagree with Islam on a theological basis. They believe in Jesus, if you will, but they don't believe that he's a son of God. And therefore, as a Christian, I can't say that I agree in any way with Islam. I think that elements of their religion do then influence some of the horrific things that we've seen across the country, like the rape gangs or the no-go zones or Sharia law being instituted in various estates and whatnot. I think that those are very horrible things, but I think that they are offshoots of a dangerous ideology that is Islam.
Well, that is exactly what I mean. Obviously talking about Islam, I am theologically against Islam, obviously not against Muslims, but I still like to call myself an Islamophobe, because to me, Islamophobe, that can mean Islam, because the word Islam is in Islamophobe.
Well, with me, it's more of a, like you say, it's on an ideology basis. Now, all the Muslims that I've met so far...
we're going down that track again. Down the old Muslim track.
The Muslims that I've met so far who believe in Islam have been the nicest people I've ever met. So you can't fault that. But like I would say...
Yeah, we always have to start with that. Can't we just say it's a crap religion and just be done with it?
I completely agree, but I do think that it is important because, you know, for example, when I was first becoming a Christian, I was the only Christian in my sixth form, and all of my mates were atheists, like diehard atheists, the sort of kind that would have made Richard Dawkins go, slow down a little bit, you know. And it was getting to the point where I was getting really kind of beaten up about it, because I was having my mates, you know, as soon as they found out I was going to be a Christian, they were calling me, oh, so you support the paedophiles, then you support the, you know, the priests.
You're going to get that with everybody.
And this was the thing, and I was ultimately very demoralized about it. And the only fella who came to my defense, and in fact we had quite a few good religious debates of us together against the atheists, was the only Muslim in my year. He's a very, very good man. You know, I believe that he's working in the city now, and I think he's doing a very, very good job. So, you know, all power to him. So I think, yes, we do. I think that one of the things that I think Gerard Batten does a very good job of, one of the things that I think UKIP as a party does a very good job of, that the media doesn't like to take on board is that we do actually differentiate the religion from the people.
Well, they don't see that, do they? They just say, if you hate Islam, if you criticize Islam, then you obviously hate all Muslims. And obviously that's not the case.
Well, this is, I always see this, like bloody Susan, whatever her name is, on Good Morning Britain. But you're talking about Muslims or whatever. It's like, how can these people, they've been working broadcasting for decades, how can they be so thick and just not know that?
And I mean, like, you know, from a religious perspective, again, sorry if I go on about it, but, you know, it's my big talking point. You know, I have friends of mine who are Catholics, who are Orthodox, you know, from different denominations. Some of them I don't believe. You know, a friend of mine is a Mormon. I've straight up have told him I think that Mormonism is a heresy. It's heretical. It's immoral, and those sorts of things will ultimately not get you into heaven. But is he still a friend? Yes. Do I see him as less than me because we disagree on religious matters? No, not at all.
No, but do you know what really winds me up about the hardcore atheists? Is whenever like something bad happens with like a Muslim, you know, whether it be a rape gang or a terrorist attack or whatever, and the guy says like Allah Akbar and everything, hardcore atheists will always be like, oh, they're not doing that because of their religion. It's like, that's got nothing to do with it, you know.
Well,
who would actually believe that they're going to go to heaven and get 50 wives or whatever the hell, 50 virgins or whatever it is? They don't understand. Atheists, like hardcore how it's 72 virgins.
72 virgins. It comes from the Hadith of the Bright Sword. It's actually, ironically, so I don't know if you know exactly.
Let me finish your point. Let me finish.
Of course, yeah.
You go on to that, yeah. Is hardcore atheists, they don't appreciate that people can actually take religion seriously enough to actually do dramatic, extreme things. Because to them, they just think, oh yeah, religion, nobody takes it seriously because I don't take it seriously, therefore everyone doesn't take it seriously.
Yeah, it's my religious point of view, yeah, I believe, and I'm going to say that I'm a pagan at the moment.
Oh,
so absolutely heretical, but carry on.
Get out.
Yeah, that's where I stand religiously.
Would people say pagan, but what is pagan? Isn't that like multiple? Can it be different things? Like, there isn't like one pagan British religion, is there?
No, it isn't one like British religion. It's like so paganism is religion before Abrahamic religions came about. So before Christianity and Islam and Judaism. So we're more believing more of the ancient gods like Odin or Thor or the Greek gods or the Egyptians.
Well, if we're talking about religion here, from my religious point of view, I'm not sort of into the all religious stuff.
Is this where the plot twist comes out? We find out that Sebastian's a Muslim.
No. I do believe there's something there. However, I don't necessarily believe in, you know, Jesus or Muhammad or whatever. And that's my point of view. I do believe there's something there. I do believe we go somewhere after this life, but I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, I have a slightly interesting relationship with Christianity where I believe all the stories and everything it teaches you are great things to learn and everything. But I just can't get myself to believe that God created the world. But to me, it doesn't matter because I just see it in the Jordan Peterson way of actually, well, these are metaphors for how to live your life and reach for a higher meaning in life.
I was a Christian when I was very young, and as soon as when my granddad died, when I was about maybe 8 or 9, I can't remember. I was just like, well, if God was this almighty being, and if he truly loved the people who believed in him, or if he loves everyone, then why would he take someone away from me who I dearly loved? And that was my turning point. You know, I used to go to church, I used to pray, and as soon as that happened, I was like, well, no, God wouldn't do that.
Go on, Richard. What do you say to that? Why does suffering exist?
Oh, why does suffering exist? Now
Hey,
that
that's
The
a-
greatest
that is
question
a-
of all time.
it's a very, very big question. And I guess that it goes back to the beginning, really.
Adam and
And
Eve.
it's rather difficult to explain. Well, ultimately, we live in a world that was made by God to be perfect. It was made that essentially that we could have everything that God provided for us. This is where we get to the Adam and Eve,
Garden of
the
Eden.
Garden of Eden. And at some point along the way is a thing known as the fall of man, where essentially it was that we disobeyed God, but it was also what we did to disobey. What it was, if you take the Genesis story literally, as I do, although I've heard very convincing arguments from people from a more evolutionary perspective who've given a similar account of things. It is that essentially the taking the fruit from the tree of knowledge meant that they learn everything about good and evil, and that is where man's freedom to understand moral choices came from. And in that regard, man all of a sudden gained the ability to do wrong, and which obviously God didn't want. So the reason why we live in the world that is bad as enough as it is because we now live in a world where death can enter into the world. We live in a world where man can make horrible decisions and can kill other men. We live in a world where, as a result of that, we've screwed up the planet, which means that we are now seeing things. We are seeing natural disasters like we've never seen before. We're seeing the results of pollution. We're seeing a world that's hurting, not just individuals, not just human beings that are hurting, but a whole world that is hurting. And this is one of the reasons why then that Christ came into the world and why he was crucified, was because under the system that had been set up by the Israelites, by the ancient Jews, the way that they would deal with these problems was to try and draw close to God and sacrifice animals to him and things like that to try and keep him sweet. Unfortunately, being humans who now have the understanding to do kind of whatever they like, the Old Testament is basically just a history of Israel drawing near to God and everything being good, and then going, actually, no, we want to do our own thing, and then bad stuff happening, and then going back to God and everything's good again, and then backpedaling and everything goes badly. And so Christ comes into the world then to break that cycle, because through his death as a sacrifice, and the only perfect sacrifice that can ever be given, we no longer need to start sacrificing things to keep God sweet. We just need to follow Jesus, go off into the world, spread the gospel, talk to everyone about what the gospel actually means, which literally translates to the good news, talking about that Jesus has died and risen again for you, for your sins, and for all of the hurt in the world. And that if people will follow him, ultimately, although the world is hurting now, and we're at a place where the world is, obviously, the world's going crazy. We're seeing wars and rumors of wars. We're seeing natural disasters. We're seeing plagues and hurt and all kinds of things like that. One of these days, Christ will be coming back. And when he does, I believe it's the book of Revelation describes it as every tear will be wiped away. There will be no more sorrow. There will be no more hurt, there will be no more pain. And eventually, this world will be made new, and it will be made free of blemish. It will be made free of war, of famine, of death. And that's what we look towards as part of a Christian vision. We look towards the idea.
I have to say, it does feel like we're getting near to that end with the amount of lunacy going on in the world at the moment.
A lot of people do say that, but then you also have to remember, I believe, if my A-level history knowledge serves me correctly, that it was the Second Crusade, so the early 1100s. The King of France went to do battle in the Holy Land because he genuinely believed that it was the apocalypse, that it would be the Armageddon, the final battle between good and evil.
But did they also?
But
doesn't it also say in the book of Revelations that there will be a false prophet before the time of Christ returns?
So we will have somebody. So that is the Antichrist, right? And so that's it's been quite entertaining how cheapened that word has become, particularly some 400 years ago.
What, false prophet has been cheapened?
No. So where it says false prophet, it's also talking about the idea of an antichrist. That's the person that everybody thinks is the
Richard.
Yeah.
Could it be the case that the Prophet Muhammad is the false prophet?
Are you trying to start a war or something, Damien?
I'm just trying to get things straight. When the Armageddon comes.
I mean, it's potential. We don't know.
Because you would think the false prophet would be someone of high power.
But I would say as well that Scripture also warns you about trying to predict when the end will come. Scripture says that the Lord Jesus will appear like a thief in the night. No one will know the hour or the coming of Christ.
So what if I'm on the toilet and he pops in?
Mate, you better hope you got a Bible in your hand, because he won't knock. We'll put it that way.
Can I ask you a question? Can I ask you a question, Richard?
Of course.
So, what happens to someone like me? I accept Jesus as a great being and teacher of life, but I don't.
Same, by the way.
I can't, get myself to believe that, God started the world and that Jesus resurrected himself from the dead. So what does someone who's more in the middle like me, what happens to me?
Well, so firstly, I'm a great believer in the word yet. You've still got a lot of life ahead of you, yet all three of you do.
But from what I understand, isn't it accepting Jesus as your Lord and Savior?
Yes, there is only one way to the Father. There is one way to the Father, and this is through me. That is what Christ said.
So if I really like Jesus and I think he's a great guy and I listen to everything he says, does that count as accepting him as my Lord and Savior?
No. And I'm really sorry to say this as well, because it's one of those difficult questions, because my family aren't religious, and I've had this conversation with them. They go, well, if I think that it's all pretty lovely, but I can't get around the fact that Christ died for my sins and then rose again for me, do I still go to heaven? And I'm like, I'm really sorry, but nah.
So is that the red line then? You have to believe in the resurrection?
It is. There is one way to the Father, and that is through me. So when Christ says that you have to follow him, it means you have to accept the things that he said were true and the things that he did were true. Because C.S. Lewis, everybody knows him for writing the Chronicles of Narnia, but he also wrote a series of great Christian apologetics. Mere Christianity.
Hello.
That is it. And I believe that I'll be quoting exactly from Mere Christianity when he said that the claims that Jesus made can only have been made from one of three men: a liar, a madman, or someone who is telling the truth. And the thing was, everything that Jesus was saying was so big and so earth-shaking that would inevitably lead to his death, because he was carrying on and upsetting the authorities.
Well, it's technically a political authority at the time, wasn't it?
In a way.
Well, yeah, Jesus was communist, right?
No, not at all. That's a very spicy meme that we can come back to another time, perhaps. But the idea is that everything that he was saying, it would have been very foolish of him to lie about it, because he knew that what he was doing would be certain death, particularly in a very, very fractious area at the time. Bearing in mind that it was only been a couple of centuries prior that the Jews had risen up in rebellion against the Romans and had been slaughtered. It was a very fractious area. That leaves then the two options that he's either telling the truth or he's nuts. But the problem is that he's far too consistent to be mad. And also, if you look at the records back then where people could be diagnosed with madness and whatever, people already had a pretty good idea of what somebody who'd lost their mind looked like. And Jesus obviously didn't fit the bill, because thousands of people followed him. Which then leaves only one conclusion: that he may have been telling the truth.
Let me just integrate. This stream has now turned into a religious podcast rather than a.
You invited me onto the podcast to talk to you about Jesus, and I'm sorry if I'm doing exactly what I said I was going to do.
Richard, do you have any advice for someone who would like to start attending church but don't know where to start?
You've probably got a few different churches where you live. I would say most of them have websites. Some of them will be very dated websites. I attend a non-denominational church, which literally means it's a Baptist church with a nice website. That's all non-denominational means. That's not my joke. What was his name? Steve Hawkins, Christian stand-up comedian.
Stephen Hawkins, the great physics scientist.
No, it was Steve. Is it Steve Hawkins? Like something like that. Sorry. But yes, he copped that joke. But no, so you'll have lots of different churches available to look at. I would recommend that you go to a few different services around. You talk to the priests or ministers or pastors or whatever they call them in their church or whatever. You ask around, you look for answers. If you know any Christians, you talk to them. If you have access to a Bible, read it. I mean, like, so one of the things I jokingly say, yeah, I guess I'll be Young Independents' pastor. But if anybody does have questions about faith, talk to me. I'm only a messenger away.
I know this might be a controversial idea, but we could do a Sunday service at the next YI conference with Richard.
That would actually be pretty cool. I would enjoy that.
I'm more than happy to do that. I dare say we've got a couple of other chaps in Young Independents like Jonathan Wood, who would probably do a far better job of leading a YI Sunday service than I would. But if people would have faith in me to do so, and there was a genuine want for it, then I'm more than glad to do it. And I guess that would mean that we'd have to reuse the hashtag YI revival, because there would be a Christian revival.
I will be giving you a message because, I'm actually thinking about giving, religion a second try with everything we've
same
about. It's actually pretty interesting. Well, it is interesting, but it's more of a looking at it from a different perspective.
So I mean, just as some context for you, right up until I became a Christian and gave my life to Christ, I was like a hateful atheist. I was a hateful atheist. I didn't believe in God, but at the same time, I hated him for existing.
That's exactly That's exactly the same as Joe Simmons. I think he was exactly the same, like hardcore atheist, like bloody God-believing people. Are they mental?
Yeah, and then a year later, he got baptized. Very similar to myself. I got baptized 2 weeks before I moved down to Cornwall. And so without God, I wouldn't have made it, to be honest.
I mean, the same happened with me. I mean, I used to be a hardcore atheist, but I tried a bit of paganism, and then just some stuff happened when I tried it, and I was quite shocked with it, and but now I'm looking towards Christianity.
I would always be careful with paganism, and the reason why I actually say that is not so much there's demons and things like that are going to turn you crazy. I mean, that is a legitimate fear, and I do think that should be concerned about. But one of the things I would also say,
about that in a minute, Richard, if I can clear you up on that.
Yeah.
So paganism. So have any of you lot seen a pentagram before?
Yes.
So demons out and stuff like that, isn't it?
Yeah.
So obviously you know that it's got like the two triangles either side.
It's like a Star of David, if you will.
Yeah, it's a bit like Star of David, but in the Abrahamic sense, it relates to Judaism or David, as you were. But in the paganistic sense, it relates to the masculine and the feminine uniting to make, the two stars on each side. And then, as you know, you've got the extra pentacles around the edges and the circle. So the extra pentacles represent earth, air, fire, water, and the spirit.
Yeah, it was a great disco band.
That's Wind and Fire.
Yeah. So earth, so it represents the 5 key elements of paganism. And then the universal circle which goes around it is like the binding energy of all human life that transcends.
I can see why people would find it interesting.
But so what I would say then is that, like, for example, my biggest bugbear with paganism is the fact that there is no organization to it. There is absolutely nothing accepted. So here's a fun fact, and I know this probably sounds a little bit weird, but when I was in university, I actually helped the pagan society get off the ground. because I just wanted to see what was going on, really. And I'm really sad to say that it confirmed my biases. It was very much a case of these people going like, you know, I follow Wotan. I followed X, Y, and Z from lots of different pantheons, and then they're saying, but I also use tarot cards because they make me feel good.
Well,
and it's just the lack of heterodoxy.
Yeah, I mean, this is another thing that irritates me about paganism is that there's a lot of fakers inside paganism who just use it. Larkers. Yeah, and they don't
People see it as a fashion statement.
But just basically.
But then I suppose there are Christians who do the same thing.
Richard.
Yeah, well, I'm taking it as a fashion statement right now. Check that out.
Well,
that's a second commandment violation. But we'll get into that
Richard,
later.
What type of Bible would you recommend? Because I've got a King James Bible at the moment, but it's very weird to read.
Yeah, King James Bibles, like obviously, like I love the King James. I'm not one of these kinds of people that like it's the King James or nothing sort of thing, because you get a lot of people like that, particularly out in the Bible Belt and stuff like that. It's really funny actually.
What about the Good News Bible?
Good News. I started on a Good News.
I remember that from my school assemblies. It was a good Bible.
They're okay. I would say that if you want to get a feel for like kind of what's being said, a Good News is okay. If you want to go into the nitty gritty about it, I'd recommend something like the English Standard Version, the New King James. If you like the way that the King James is written, but the these and thous and thys really struggle, you know. A New King James is good. The New American Standard Bible is a good Bible.
What about the New Living Bible?
You should get this one, Jacob.
The New Living Translation is okay. It's. Have you heard of the New International Version?
No.
It's probably on the same parity as that. They're two very, very common Bibles that you find in evangelical churches. Go on.
Could you just clear what an evangelical is, quick?
Right. Okay. So evangelical is like a really catch-all term to describe a large branch of Protestant Christianity. So basically, if they're not Anglicans, Lutherans, but they're not like Pentecostals, sort of those sorts of people who ride around on the ground when they hear the Lord speaking and things like that. If you're not on either of those two extremes, chances are you're in the evangelical set. Now, evangelical, it literally means this is the group that wants to go out and talk about Jesus. So pretty much, if you've ever seen a Christian street stall,
there's one in my town. There's one in my town all weekend.
So if there's like a street stall where people are talking about Jesus and they're not Jehovah's Witnesses, they're probably evangelicals. So like evangelical really is a catch-all. Within them you get Baptists, you know, sometimes Methodists will describe themselves as that, you know, Presbyterians sometimes. So all these different churches, you know, or like non-denominationals as well, quite often say, oh no, we're not like Baptist, we're not like Presbyterian, we're not really anything, but we know we'd probably say that we're evangelicals, you know.
I have to say my favourite preacher has to be Ian Paisley. He was amazing.
Ian Paisley was a Presbyterian.
Yeah.
So Presbyterians are an interesting bunch.
Scottish Christianity, basically, isn't it?
It's essentially. I mean, so I think that there's definitely a good reason why Catholicism died out in Scotland, and that's probably because having Latin read with a Scottish accent must be just absolutely horrific. Scotty. It's sort of like no wonder the language died out. Nobody wants to hear that. But Presbyterianism is it's Scottish Christianity. It's spread off everywhere as well. I mean, there are actually more Presbyterians in Ghana now than there are in Scotland.
Jesus.
But that's the guy. But no blasphemy now. Come on.
No, I was saying his name. I was saying his name in goodness, not in vain. Like Jesus, that's amazing. Just like Jesus.
The Lord knows your heart, Damien.
Yeah, exactly.
The
Lord likes salsa dancing as well.
I'm pretty sure he does. But so the Presbyterians and stuff like that. I mean, there are so many different denominations that it's kind of difficult to explain them all. But evangelical is a nice broad catch-all phrase. If they're Protestants. And they don't need bells and smells to worship Jesus, but they also don't need to fall over on the floor to worship Jesus. Chances are they're in the evangelical bracket.
Yeah. So what is Ian Paisley just a standard Presbyterian, or he's got to be like?
So the Ulster Free Presbyterian Church, I think, was the name of it, which means that it's a Presbyterian church. They adhere to all of their things, so they're basically.
Can you be an evangelical Presbyterian?
Yeah. So Presbyterians would usually fall within that bracket. So if you're a Presbyterian, which means you hold to certain things, which is things like you believe in infant baptism, but you also believe that communion is symbolic and not. It doesn't literally turn into flesh and blood in your body. You know, when you take the bread and the wine. If you believe that it's a symbol, if you believe in baptizing your kids, if you believe in a certain way that the church should operate, then you would be a Presbyterian. If you are a Presbyterian who likes talking to people about Jesus, you're an evangelical Presbyterian, bro.
If you want to come here, and the Lord will strike you down.
Hey, no, so this is one of those things. Everybody says that, you know, the Lord's going to like hit you with a lightning bolt or something. If history is anything to go by, then chances are what will actually happen is the church will just demolish your house and build a church on where your house was. That's the way that things used to go. If you were an enemy of the church, they just say that you lost the right to your property, and they build like a cathedral on your village.
So
and there was nothing you could do about it.
Wait, I have an important question. If Jesus was around today, would he be a UKIP supporter?
Possibly.
Christ was independent of any ideology. He came to bring about a new way of living, independent of ideology and empire. Somebody put it very, very.
He supports the independent group.
So somebody put it very, very nicely to me, and it's, why would Christ vote when he's already the king?
Because he might want to get rid of Theresa May, and he probably could negotiate a Brexit deal.
I believe that Jesus would want the rightful determination of the people of the land, and surely it's our God-given right to Brexit out of the European Union. No?
Actually, one second. I'm just going to dig out my Bible and a couple of assorted notes. I'll be back in 2 seconds.
I have a couple of questions for you, Richard, when you get back.
Same, but I want to go first because I barely spoke.
So shall we have a quick chat about the locals before he comes back?
Well, we want to get into that a bit deeper, so we might as well just get this part done.
I call shotgun on the first question.
As long as Richard doesn't take too long. Let's he's there we go. Yeah. Try not to be too long with this because we want to move on and let Richard.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just gonna close up because it was actually something that my minister said in the evening service that I go to.
Which copy of the Bible is it, Richard?
So this isn't from the. I have a New King James Bible here. It's the one that I preach with. So I do some preaching every now and again also. And it's a very faithful old thing. I like the way it handles.
Is that just a notebook you've got?
Pardon? Yeah, this here is just a notebook. So it was actually something that that he was talking about when Christ was crucified. But it was all done cloak and dagger. It was done silently. It wasn't done in public. And the reason for that is the only thing stopping the Sanhedrin or the Jewish council from killing Jesus openly was the common people. The common people saw Christ move and they saw his miracles. They were outraged at the lies of the high priests. And that's why in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 22, it said that Judas met the high priests in the absence of the multitudes, because they knew that if they got Jesus out in the open in front of everybody, there would have been riots, there would have been bloodshed, because the people were desperate to hear his message. So ultimately, I dare say that Christ is indeed a manifestation of the rightful, popular will, because deep down in everybody's core of their beings, they crave God and they want to crave a relationship with God and they want to know who God was. And if you want to know who God was, you should open up your Bibles and you should start reading. And there's some UKIP propaganda.
I think humanity has a natural need to believe in a higher being, if that makes sense. We've always had that.
To believe in the higher being, certainly.
In the higher beings, yeah.
Well, I requested a visit from a local pastor. To talk about getting back into religion, so that should be fun.
Yeah, one of
so-
the things I find most compelling about Christianity, I know you go quite deep, Richard, when you try and like not convert, but like tell people about
Yeah.
Christianity. And sometimes when you do that, I sometimes think actually you
He's
should
more of a
like
scholar, isn't he?
you should bring it back to basics a bit
I
because I
apologize.
think
I get excited and then I go in for
yeah,
it.
I think you get slightly too theological. Whilst I'm really enjoying the C.S. Lewis book, and I like the way he says we all have this sense where certain things are right and certain things are wrong, and we don't know where that comes from. And he relates it to what we call the law of human nature. Like we all know it's good that you get up if a pregnant woman wants to sit down on the bus. Why do we know that to be a good thing? That's built into us. How is it built into us? It can't just come from nowhere. But
I completely agree. So yeah, sorry if I do go in too deep, but it's brilliant. It's brilliant that you're reading C.S. Lewis. He's honestly he's fantastic.
Well, that's what I'd say to anyone who's interested in getting into Christianity.
Definitely
use that as your entrance book, because if you just go straight into the Bible and you're not like well versed on the basics, you're going to find it difficult.
Well,
I'd also say
that. David, do you want to go first?
No, I wasn't going to say anything. I was waiting for someone to speak.
just a quick question from to Richard, obviously. Well, obviously, you know about my sexuality.
Yeah.
Obviously, I know the Catholic religion strictly, forbids anyone from, practicing it kind of thing. Well, basically, what my question is, if I went to a church, do you think they would accept my sexuality? I think go to a place where I do feel welcome, and I don't want to go to a place where they're going to say, "Well, that's wrong. You're going to go to hell, and you need to repent your sins because that's not what Jesus taught us."
So I would say then that there are two different things going on there. So one is the acceptance of your lifestyle, which they don't necessarily need to do if they believe. I would say if they are Bible-believing Christians. However, I would also say that no church should turn away anybody because of their orientation or anything like that. I'll try and wrap up this Christian subject for now, but I'll try and close with there's something that actually came out of an Orthodox church relatively recently. And the priest came up to the altar to the lectern to speak, and he said, earlier on in this church service, a woman came in with her child, and because this is an Orthodox church where women are pretty much commanded to wear long dresses and head coverings, and because she came in wearing jeans and didn't have a head covering on, somebody in this church scolded her, and she left with her child.
Wow.
And the priest then said, I don't know who it was, but whoever it was, I am commanding you now to pray for that woman and her child for the rest of your life. Because of you, she may never set foot in a church again, and she may never hear the gospel again. And with that was it. That was his sermon in a minute. And then he just got down and carried on with the rest of the service. And that's the big thing. It's we don't have to accept the way that the world is. We don't have to accept people's lifestyles because we're called to live a completely different one. And we're going to expect that we cop flack for that. Christ said, the world will hate you, but remember that they hated me before they hated you. And that's why he was crucified. So we're already expecting the fact that the world isn't going to get on with the things that we believe. But that doesn't mean that we can't. It means that we don't. It means that we must always still act in a loving way, because the love of Christ is our most effective weapon in the world. And if we are ever to display ourselves as being hard-hearted people who would exclude someone for whatever reason, then are we doing things right? There's a difference between disagreement and essentially exiling someone. So I firmly believe that we should definitely let people like you in. Sorry.
Richard.
Okay. One thing I wanted to ask before we move on to our other topics is I did want to get this thing down. Like, what is the line where you're going to go to heaven like we were talking about, if you follow Jesus and all that kind of thing, what do you need to believe in order to get the pass, so to speak?
What do you need to believe in to get the pass? Do you believe that Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior? And
But that's the thing. What does that mean?
So what that means is, do you believe that Christ came to earth, was born of a virgin, lived a life, lived as a man, but lived as the only human being in this world who lived without sin, then who began his ministry, introduced so many different people to the faith? Do you believe that he was then betrayed by Pontius or by Judas and then sent
Okay,
to death
so
by
I'll just
Pontius
stop you
Pilate?
there. So you have to believe in the virgin birth and the resurrection. Is that
Yes.
fair to say?
You have to believe in the virgin birth, the crucifixion, and the resurrection. But then after that, you can believe that all of those things happen. You go, okay, so maybe he was this godly figure, but why is that important? Do you believe that he was sent here by God, essentially, to take upon the sins of the world? I mean, I'm going to go to a classic, and I'll try and keep it sweet. But have you ever heard John 3:16?
No, but let's end it on this.
John 3:16. Let's do it.
Exclusive on the Kipper stream.
There we go. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. He who believes in him is not condemned, but he who does not believe is condemned already, because he has not believed in the name of the only begotten Son of God. May God richly bless the public reading of his word. There we go. I hope that that's given some more information, because ultimately Scripture will provide a better explanation than anything I can provide.
Yeah, of course. I've been to Romania a couple times, a place called Cluj-Napoca, and everywhere it's funny actually, because they're a former communist country, and obviously communism is very
anti-religion.
Yeah, exactly. And funnily enough, you have these massive churches popping up everywhere now, and it's kind of going back in the opposite direction.
Well, it's the same in Poland as well at the minute.
I think no, but Poland has always stayed religious. They were mind you, they weren't exactly communist, were they?
Well, they were suppressed. And here's one of the fun things, was that the Soviet Union really, really cracked down, actually, on all of the Eastern European countries, because Orthodoxy and Catholicism, huge. And to the point where, to make a symbol about the fact, like, we are killing your holy figures, they would actually take out the icons of saints and of the Virgin Mary and of Christ and things like that. And they would shoot them. They'd line them up like firing squad style and would shoot these icons to show that we are killing your holy figures. And, in the case where they would line up a picture of Jesus and shoot it, it's like, we're killing your God. Very Nietzschean. But then, so particularly Poland was great, because the church went underground like most of the other European churches. And then they were like, right, okay, crap, what do we do? Essentially, do we lay low and stay safe, but then not witness the word of God? Or do we risk execution, arrest, and persecution by going out as a church and declaring God's name publicly? So they decided to go out publicly. And can you imagine thousands of Christians up and down Poland just literally coming out of nowhere, handing out Bibles, like literally pulling out massive banners off of buildings saying Christ is risen and things like that? And the communists were just like, what do we do? We can't arrest all of them. We can't shoot all of them. There are too many of them. And it's like they did the same thing in Red Square just after the Berlin Wall came down. In the middle of Red Square, they pulled up this massive banner with Christ is risen on it in the heart of Russia. And people were just falling to their knees and weeping because they hadn't seen it in almost a lifetime. Because ultimately the word of God is so strong, and the church it thrives under persecution. There's a reason now
why true, isn't it? Yeah.
It's why even now in places like
faith and in belief.
And this is the thing, the church is thriving in places where it's persecuted, in the Middle East, in parts of Africa, where churches can't meet in public.
China as well.
China is the largest single church in the world, and it's having to operate underground. It's horrific. And you know, but all of these people, they're deciding that they're going to carry on believing in God. They're going to carry on worshiping, and it means that they're meeting in people's basements and sheds and places in the middle of nowhere, and they're still reading the Bible. They're still worshiping, and they're still giving God the glory in spite of all that persecution. The church is just unstoppable.
There's a great film which basically sums up exactly what you're saying, and it's originally a revered Christian-related book. Silence by Martin Scorsese.
I've never seen it. I've never seen it. I really, really want to see it though.
That is a fantastic film. It's all about these Jesuit missionaries going.
It was in Japan, wasn't it?
In Japan, and they went to Japan to find this priest, which was abducted, or he'd gone missing essentially. And they meet all the people who are the Christians which are being persecuted, and it is it's such like a beautifully made film. And it's also kind of entertaining as well. So I definitely recommend it.
I definitely have to look at that.
Richard, could I ask you a quick one?
Let's wrap up the Christian thing.
Yeah, talk to me afterwards. You know I'll be available. No worries, man.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to our next topic. I think we want to talk about the Newport by-election coming up, don't we?
Cool. Who do you want to take ahead on that one, man?
Well, I might as well tell you all the information I know, which is very little, which is that we have been informed that Neil Hamilton will be stepping in to the UKIP, going up for election. And Neil Hamilton, he's not actually from Newport, but he's not.
He's a Cardiff boy. He's Cardiff boy.
Cardiff boy. So there was a slight bit of.
He's from the area, but Wales is one of those strange places where if you come from the next valley over, you could be like a sworn enemy.
Yes. What do you mean he's from the area? He's originally from Newport. Is that what you're saying?
Well, so he, in his statement, I'll see if I can find it on my phone, but essentially in his statement that he gave when he was standing as the candidate, he did say about the fact he's from that kind of area. He is a Welshman. He is a Welshman. I'll try and find
that kind of area.
Yeah, and it's, you know, some people care more about how directly close you are than anything else.
I'm from Manchester. That's a little bit like Liverpool.
I'm a stayed and steady Essex boy, I'm afraid. There you go, right. I get so many emails these days, man. Is it the 4th?
I was wondering why you didn't have that thick Cornish accent, which I hoped you would.
I'm afraid every now and again I say Cornish and I mix a few things and I say right on, but my girlfriend is born and bred Cornish through and through.
Sorry, I'm back. I've been just having a chat with someone over America about religion.
Oh, well, so I'll quickly read you Neil Hamilton's statement then. I have long-standing family links with Newport. My parents were married in Rogerstone. My mother's family lived in Castleton 200 years ago and moved to Risca when the coal industry developed. I was born in the old county of Monmouthshire and lived in Blackwood as a boy. The Conservatives and Labour are jointly betraying Brexit. May and Corbyn are determined to stop us leaving the EU on the 29th of March. Labour now wants a second referendum to try and reverse the last people's vote. The Lib Dems and Plaid Cymru are total Euro fanatics. They think they know best. This by-election is a chance to poke them all in the eye. Newport voted Leave by a large margin, 56% to 44%, but the political establishment refuses to listen. UKIP is the only party committed to an immediate, clean Brexit. On April 4th, Newport West can deliver a lightning bolt to Westminster and Cardiff Bay and make the political elite listen to the people. Newport can make Brexit happen. And then he says some more stuff about UKIP firing on all cylinders.
Interject. You know, we've now seen with all the political parties except us their true colours, essentially. Labour said they would not back a second referendum. They said they would respect the vote. Then they turned back on it and said,
"Yeah,
if there's a second referendum, we'll back it." So that proves that they are liars, just like with the student fees. And then the Conservatives, most of them are Remainers. Now, I used to like Jacob Rees-Mogg, but he's intending on supporting Theresa May's Brexit deal, which does not reflect the referendum result.
So we could have a nice little avenue here for Newport.
Yes, and I think it'll be interesting. But I mentioned it before we started, and then you told me to shut up about it until it came up on the podcast. But there are 11 parties standing in Newport West in the by-election. Three of them are UKIP, For Britain, and the Democrats and Veterans Party.
Oh, what the hell is For Britain contesting that seat?
Well,
for? I'm starting to get pissed off with Anne-Marie Waters and their bloody For Britain lot. Like, they're totally just repeating the same things that we say. I know they're a different party and everything, but they are saying exactly the same thing. So why are they splitting the vote?
They are UKIP. It's like all these people who don't like UKIP, but they still believe in UKIP's fundamental policies, like for Britain. It's just ludicrous. So now, all because they don't agree with Gerard Batten's leadership. Now, obviously, this creates a problem, splitting the vote.
No. But what are you talking about? You're talking about something different, though. We're talking about For Britain. What do you mean people don't agree with Gerard Batten? People in For Britain you're talking about?
So the issue is that the people in For Britain believe that everything that UKIP does, but because Anne-Marie Waters says, oh, well, they're not consistently against Islam, so you should stay with us. So it's like, okay, so you're essentially becoming a single-issue party dedicated to tackling Islam, radical Islam. The issue with that is that ultimately, if UKIP goes down the route of becoming a single-issue party talking about radical Islam only, we die. If we don't become a party that's tackling all kinds of different issues, we die after the 29th of March. We must become a multi-issue populist party.
Well, we do, and we have been doing for 25 years or so.
And ultimately, the reason why Anne-Marie Waters won't rejoin us as it stands is because we don't bang on about Islam all the time, every day. We're apparently not taking a strong enough stance against it.
No, what I think it is to be fair to her, I do think she does cover a lot of different areas. I don't think she's completely obsessed with Islam, but I think the problem is that she sees For Britain as like pure, and because UKIP has had problems in the past, whether it be Henry Bolton or whatever, that we're not the full deal. We don't fully believe in, fully tackling extremism if it happens to be a certain thing which is not so tasteful to tackle. But that's actually rubbish, because if you look at our new leadership now, there is literally nothing we won't talk about. Gerard Batten will talk about everything. And for them to just be exactly the same as us and then say, oh no, we're different. You're not different. You're totally not different at all.
What I find interesting is that Gerard Batten has decided to back Seb in this university thing, and yet you won't heard anything from Anne-Marie Waters on it.
No.
Yeah, well, yeah. I don't know. I like Anne-Marie Waters, but I just think it's really unrealistic. I know it's like kind of, being cynical, but it's really unrealistic to start a party from nowhere and think you're going to get anywhere. You might as well consolidate it in a party which already serves that purpose anyway.
Yeah. This is ultimately it, and it's unfortunate as well, because the Democrats and Veterans Party, obviously, it was founded by John Rhys Evans, the guy who stood in the leadership elections in the past, who wanted more direct democracy. And ultimately, the reason why they left the party and went off to do their own thing is because they don't agree with our bid to institute proportional representation. Instead, they want more direct democracy and greater powers of MP recall. The annoying thing is I don't understand why we can't have both, because otherwise our policy platforms are pretty much identical.
Yeah, I agree with that, Richard.
And on that point as well, the real shame about the Democrats and Veterans is John Rhys Evans now runs the party from Africa. He lives out in Kenya or somewhere with his family. It's like this kind of like reverse colonialism kind of thing going on. But that means that the party on the ground is run by Gavin Felton, the chairman, and a bunch of other people who essentially have locked John Rhys Evans into this position where he's the this kind of idol that's lifted up as like they only ever refer to him as the leader, which is really kind of like pseudo-fascist and very worrying.
I just think they're wasting so much energy, which could be served so well in UKIP. They could be doing great things for UKIP.
And the thing is, I know so many people who left UKIP under Bolton. They went and joined For Britain or the Democrats and Veterans, and have now come back because they've said both of these parties are terrible.
So they are coming back then?
They are gradually coming back, but ultimately I think that when we've got a little bit more time to breathe, UKIP should be seriously establishing its position as the only populist party in this country, and should be doing everything that we can to bring parties and splinter parties like that back under the purple banner. I'm a firm believer that UKIP should be a united voice, because what's going to happen in this by-election, Eric Joffe, the YI London chairman, made a point of it in the YI Hub recently. What's going to happen is you're going to have For Britain and the Democrats and Veterans campaign on nothing else apart from UKIP is bad, vote for the UKIP alternative, which will split the Brexiteer vote, will split the Leave vote, and it means that we won't look as strong as we are. Because even if we don't win, we could still get a handy third place, and if people in Newport really hate the Tories, we could even scrape second. While For Britain and the Democrats and Veterans are kicking up a stink and damaging our prospects, that won't happen.
Are any of these parties, apart from Labour and the Conservatives to an extent, a threat in terms of like taking off, like lessening UKIP's chances or whatever?
So what we've got 11 candidates standing. We've got a candidate from Labour, the Conservatives, Plaid Cymru, UKIP, Liberal Democrats, Green Party, the Abolish the Welsh Assembly Party,
Nice.
Renew, I have no idea who Renew is, the Social Democrat Party, For Britain, and the Democrats and Veterans.
But isn't it the case?
So
that
Renew
the
is
Conservatives
basically
do very poor in that area.
Also, what I've looked at previous election results for Newport West, and what's happened is your Conservatives will get about 30,000 votes, Conservatives get about 23,000 votes, and then all the other parties will usually get around 1,000 votes. The only time that trend has been bucked was in 2015, when UKIP got about 6,000 votes and came third, and we were the only people who could challenge. I mean, like the Liberal Democrats come less than us. I mean, I think in one election way back, the BNP actually scored higher than the Liberal Democrats did.
So there is a sizable Conservative vote, and
there is a strong right-wing vote. It's about whether or not we can tap into it.
These people could be pissed off with the Conservative Party the way things are going,
Absolutely.
And they could potentially come to us, right?
Can I just make a point quick?
Sure.
No.
So you said you don't know who the Renew Party is. So I looked this up a while back, and basically, you know how David Cameron calls himself a One Nation Conservative?
Oh, yeah.
So it's basically the Remain group of the One Nation Conservatives who decided to leave the Tory party and start their own moderate Tory party to try and keep it, basically.
Well, nice one there, guys. Well done. I guess you should just get used to being irrelevant.
I bloody hate the Conservative Party. I could go on such a rant about the Conservatives.
I used to be one, man. I know.
Literally nothing about the Conservative Party is conservative. All they do is like all they bloody advocate for is, we need more women-only places where we discriminate against men. We love Islam. I'm going to go into a mosque now and say how Islam is doing such a great duty for British society, and not mention things like, Islamic rape gangs and all that.
So one of the things that I always like to say between the divide between Conservatives and Labour is ultimately, if you get a Conservative government, you're going to be drip-fed poison for 5 years until you die. If you vote Labour, you're just going to get shot in the back of the head. Which one would you rather have? Because either way, we will still die, regardless of which choice you have.
I might use that analogy. Yeah, sorry.
I recommend it because ultimately we have to break the system. Because the wheel just travels round. We get Conservative Labour, everything gets worse, and nobody cares about the man at the bottom. The number of times I've spoken to mates of mine in the pub, and they say, "Well, there's no point in me voting because nothing changes for someone like me anyway."
No,
the rich get richer, the poor get poorer, and that's just the way it is.
No, but people are pissed off now, for real. Like, this is the time, this is the perfect breeding ground for momentum, gaining momentum. And I'm not talking about the Labour group. Sebastian, what's your 2 cents on the Newport election?
It's just a great opportunity for us, really, with everything going on with Brexit. Like Richard said, that voted to leave with a big majority, and because UKIP are the only ones who have been determined to fight for Brexit, for 26 long continuous years without any sort of fail, I think they will turn to us because, for Britain, Democrats and veterans, they've not been around long enough to.
Well, they're so minuscule as well.
Yeah, they've not been around long enough that people can actually trust them. Like UKIP has been around for 26, 27 years, and we continuously have said, we will fight for Brexit, and that gives us, that advantage to these other parties.
Yeah.
And, it could either go two ways. They could still see, well, you're not in power and you can't get anywhere, or, right, you continuously fought for Brexit. You're the reason that Brexit is happening. We need to get out now, so we'll vote for you. It can go one or two ways. However, we've just got to see which way it turns out, to be honest.
Well, like you're saying, we do have consistency on our side, which the other parties don't have.
Yeah.
I think that extra push in terms of what's going to translate that into a lot of votes is going to be good campaigning. So,
and the interesting thing as well is that it's going to be on April the 4th. That's 5 days after Brexit Day, depending on what happens.
Oh, really?
That could bolster us in a big way.
Oh, looking like Brexit's going to be extended anyway, because Theresa May is still trying to push to get a better deal when the EU have clearly said, well, we're not negotiating, like, essentially piss off. Sorry for swearing, but that is what they've said.
I'll have a word with my pastor, it'll be fine.
That's the thing about being a UKIP supporter, which I actually quite like, in that it's a win-win situation for us, because we either get Brexit, great, or we get like crap happen to Brexit where we don't get a proper Brexit, and then people come to UKIP. So win-win.
It's a sad state of affairs, though, isn't it? Where we can win on both of those fronts.
Yeah, exactly. But
if Theresa May hasn't got this into her head soon, then obviously it will be a disaster for us. Like she says, if Parliament do not agree on this deal, then we may not be leaving the European Union after all. Because we voted, so it shows that they're not democratic. If they are not willing to listen to the people, the will of the people, if they're not going to look at that referendum result, then they've got a lot of problems heading their way, and that is going to be the end of the Conservative Party, as far as I know it.
Yeah. And I think this also leads us on to the local elections as well this year, because I think there's going to be a huge voter backlash this year.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be quite as strong as you think, Jacob. But I do think we'll definitely get an improvement. That's for sure.
I think we'll do better than 2017. Was it?
Oh, it'll be easy to do better than 2017. We got absolutely decimated.
Are we talking about the local election, though?
The local elections in 2018 we suffered with. The 2017 general election we struggled with. I mean, I dare to say, and I hate to steal Tony Blair's, I think it was 97 election pledge, but things can only get better. We can only go up at this point.
Funnily enough, that was the time where everything started going to shit completely as soon as Tony Blair got elected. Tony Blair, for me,
got worse a lot longer than that. But
things were drifting in a worse direction before Tony Blair. But Tony Blair, he was the Judas of British politics, as far as I'm concerned.
I'll just say.
I'll finish up. If you look at the immigration statistics, everyone talks about immigration, but not many people actually look at the statistics. If you look at when Labour got elected with Tony Blair, the amount that immigration shot up is actually criminal. And if people really knew, I think we'd see some pretty nasty scenes if people actually knew the extent of what's going on.
Back to the past elections, in 2017, we did bad, like always, but it's just one of them. But in 2018, we was expecting to do bad because, UKIP was on the verge of collapse. Gerard Batten didn't want people knocking on doors, getting approved by the people, and getting asked about Henry Bolton's affair which they don't. Which, in fairness, it's not fair to them. They just want to get out there and promote the UKIP cause. Now, obviously, we did expect that we would do bad, but at least we had candidates. But this year, obviously, I think would be the turning point for us.
This is the resurrection.
Yeah. Even if we get, 1 or 2 seats in Parliament, that is more than we've got last year.
Oh, and the thing is as well, is even if we only got the one, then we know that the one that we would be getting wouldn't be some kind of purple conservative. It would be a dyed-in-the-wool, purple-blooded populist.
Exactly.
And that would be enough. That would be where we start things. Because then, and here's one of the things that I think that Corbyn, somehow, if he got into number 10, I think would be very, very interesting. Because even if we only got one UKIP MP, you have to realise that then every single party in Parliament, apart from the Conservatives, supports proportional representation one way or another. And then we would use that to essentially force either a referendum or just an act of Parliament to give ourselves proportional representation. And that's when the floodgates open. Here's a fun thing. I'll ask you a question. Under a direct proportional system where the percentage of the vote that a party gets equals the number of seats that the party gets, in 2015, how many seats would UKIP have gotten?
Around 183-ish.
Well, we got 4 million votes, didn't we?
So that would equal 80 seats. You're very above there on that one, Jacob, but definitely understandable. But it would be about 80 seats.
80 seats would have been,
80 seats would have made us deal breakers in a coalition. I was actually a Liberal Democrat back in 2015, and one of our biggest propaganda points that we actually set up a website for it, and it was called Blue Kip, because they honestly believed that the Conservatives, UKIP, and the DUP would form a coalition with which to.
I'm going to search it up now, Blue Kip.
So BLUKIP.
I'm just trying to find it now. It's only on Twitter. Is there not like a .com or?
No, they used to be a website. They've probably taken it down now because this was back in 2015. But I mean, we were handing out leaflets with it on and things like that. It was very entertaining because we were saying we were telling people on the doorsteps the Conservatives will get in with a coalition with UKIP and the DUP, and they'll kill everyone and they'll murder immigrants and it will be terrifying. It will be doomsday. Don't vote for them. Don't vote for them.
It would be funny if we. I know it's a long shot, but I would laugh. If UKIP got into power and see the look in Jeremy Corbyn's face. I'm like, we
glorious.
Power and you're not, so you're going to have to listen to us. And if you don't like it, that's it.
Well, so the beautiful thing is if we instituted proportional representation, we would be able to get into Parliament quite handsomely, which would then lead us to be in a position where we would have parties come, we would have the Conservatives come to us and be, oh, can we form a coalition with you? And we could just be like, no. We're not watering down our message for anyone. And we would end up leading to these positions where minority governments would be trying to run the country. And they'd be trying to lean on support from other people. And they'd just be collapsing all the time. Because then obviously then the glorious UKIP victory would come. And we'd sweep into power, potentially in coalition with the likes of, I don't know, the DUP, because they're pretty based at the end of the day.
I love the DUP.
God-fearing Northern Ireland. Ulster says never, never, never. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All good children go to heaven.
The thing about Ulster people is they will never surrender.
There are men in Ulster who would rather die than take down the flag.
I love how he just raises his voice super randomly. You don't know when it's going to come. The thing about us is we never surrender.
No, but
would you boys like an ice cream?
I would also like to see the look on people's faces when they said, "Oh, UKIP will never get into power," and we are in power. So you're
lovely, wouldn't it? Can you imagine that? It would be glorious. It would be there'd be more democracy for everyone. There'd be an NHS that would actually be a national health service. Man, it would be great. There'd be more houses. It would be sweet.
But then their main argument will be, well, you'll ban Islam, you'll ban all immigrants, and you'll just be like, Have you read our party manifesto?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
no,
like there's no way that we ban Islam. It's just that we would let people like Imam Tawhidi in and encourage an Islamic Reformation. I mean, the Reformation worked out pretty good for Christianity. I'm just saying the formula works.
yeah.
Well,
But,
look,
one of the main things, sometimes people say, "Oh, we shouldn't bang on about immigration." I'm one of the ones who's very pro banging on about immigration, because immigration, the amount it's affected us in the last 20 years, I think it's a million more people under 30 are living with their parents than 20 years ago. We've got so no one can afford a house. Wages have stagnated because we've got a convoluted marketplace, and you've got like your Bradford, your Lutons, your Rotherhams, you've got rape gangs. We're in serious territory now. Britain has never experienced anything like this. I was in a bookshop, I think in Stratford upon Avon, and I bought this book. It's called Immigration between 1066 to 1939. So Battle of Hastings to World War II. Yeah. And as I was buying the bookshop seller said to me, interesting fact. There's been more immigration since World War II than the whole of that 1,000 years.
Yeah. It sounds about right.
It's unbelievable.
I think it's interesting as well. Sorry, Jacob. I'll let you take over because I'm going to rant again.
I'd just like to point this out that I was on Sky News the other day talking about.
Yes, I saw. Really good job.
Let's move on to that next.
Yeah.
I'll just quickly say that I think that what you're saying about like immigration is a massive issue in that regard. And I mean, obviously, I would look at it and say, the societal decline it's so many different causes, but I think that we can tackle all of these things. So immigration is a huge one. Obviously, if 200,000 people aren't coming in every year, that means that we can actually start to look at the NHS and the housing market seriously. Then we can start to institute a system of genuine affordable housing. I mean, I put my hand up and say that if there were these container homes going around, or modular homes, like we suggested in one of our previous manifestos, I'd move into one. I'd move into one handily.
Well, for anyone who doesn't know, I'm going to run as MP for Surrey Heath. I know that might scare some people.
I've actually been penciled in as the parliamentary candidate for Camborne, Redruth and Hale down in Cornwall. So I completely sympathise with you, bro.
Fantastic.
Speaker in Parliament would just be amazing. Him holding his Bible up in Parliament.
Yeah.
There are men in Cornwall. There are men in Cornwall who would rather die than take down the flag.
What would my accent be like? There are men in Surrey Heath who would die. Whoa, I wouldn't say that. I'd be like,
there are men in Surrey Heath who would be late to work than stop for their artisanal coffees.
I was just going to say that. There are men in Surrey Heath who would miss a cup of tea to lay down Brexit.
I would have become an MP, but obviously I don't think I'm ready for it yet. I'm ready to become a councillor. However, MP is just a big step up for me.
Yeah, well
that's what I thought as well. But the Southwest UKIP chairman had a different idea, so I'm a parliamentary candidate now.
You're not quite as matured as us, Sebastian, but you will get there. So you definitely should run eventually.
When you're less edgy and you're more bitter, the time will come.
Well, I would love if I was still in university and they walked in and they said, "Oh, congratulations, you're an MP," and I was like, "Yeah, I'm in power now."
Now,
which
do
means
your tie
that you're
up.
going to the gulag.
Put your top button up. Do your tie up, and make yourself down to the next UKIP conference.
Well, first of all, I couldn't make the UKIP conference because sadly it was my birthday.
That's a poor excuse.
But were you at the YI conference?
Could have celebrated your birthday at the UKIP conference.
Were you at the YI conference?
No, couldn't afford it.
Oh, okay. The YI conference was good. Anyway, the reason why I mentioned the parliamentary thing is part of the parliamentary standing for Parliament is they do a big debate, and this will be in a big church hall. They do it every time there's an election.
Hustings.
Yeah, exactly. But I think I was asking my chairman about this, but the one in Surrey Heath, they have like a big venue and they do a lot of people. And I'll be against Michael Gove. And I've been fantasizing about this moment, right? Like
Please
know-
make him look like a fool.
And I know they'll probably make me like sit at just the desk and stay at the desk.
Yeah.
But what I want to do is I want to like go up. I want to get big boards printed, and I'll go, "Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Damien. I'm from UKIP. As you can see here, this is the immigration graph. You can see straight up like that. My next graph will be this graph. This is house prices, and as you can see, a big old line going straight up to the top. You see any correlation there? You see anything going on there?
I think you should wear your salsa dancing.
That's it. You should just salsa your way up to the stage and be like, "Hi there, I'm your UKIP candidate." And then while you're salsa dancing, you should be like, "And as you can see, this line of correlation, you see it matches this one here." It would be perfect.
Unfortunately,
you win by a landslide.
Unfortunately, unlike America, the Latin vote isn't quite as strong over here.
But the Latin dancing vote is very strong.
I'll be like, yeah, I'm a UKIP candidate. I'm not what you think.
You could pull a Trumpian sort of thing, like, how can I hate immigration when I love Hispanic dancing?
I'm actually like, this is brilliant. I should turn up at the hustings like this, like walk on, do a little dance, like. So guys, we're going to talk about immigration.
You need to be wearing a shirt made entirely of sequins. Be like, "Hi guys, I'm your UKIP candidate. Just to let you know, the immigration rate is far too high, and the housing market has collapsed. Vote UKIP."
Because that's going a bit Bruce Forsyth now. I was thinking more, I don't know, Tita Puentes or something like that.
Or you could do this. Hey, can you afford to buy a house?
He's not on a Purple Bricks advert. No, Purple Bricks. Purple Bricks. I'm just saying, it's an idea. We should use it.
So
I wasn't thinking of voting UKIP, but now that I've seen his gyrating hips, I think totally different about their immigration policy.
guys, so can I take of my Sky News interview?
Yeah.
Of course,
So,
he wants to talk about himself.
So the other day I was on Sky News, obviously talking Brexit and mainstream media, I know. So would you guys like to say anything about the way I performed?
I thought you did a really good job. I noticed this as well, because obviously before you went on, we had the little thread on the Young Independence Hub where you said, like, look, any pointers? And like from all of the good advice that I saw, you followed it. You know, it was even like little things. It was like, nod when the other people are talking, because then, you know, at least even if you don't know what they're talking about, it looks like you know what they're talking about. That's half the battle.
I do that all the time.
Also, like, but like you paced yourself out brilliantly. There are a couple of times where you stumbled, but that's understandable, really. You paced yourself well. You didn't just go, "I'm here with UKIP and I think this because blah, 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 blah." You breathed, you spoke clearly, everybody knew what you were saying. And I think you did a really, really good job, man. So, like, really props to you. You did.
Yeah,
brilliant.
exactly. That's exactly what I thought. Do you want me to be ultra critical and just mention one tiny thing?
Go for it.
Okay. The only thing which you said which could be misconstrued by...
What's the last bit about the finance bit?
No, not at all.
Oh.
It is the bit when you said the immigrants, they're coming over, they're taking our jobs.
I will admit, that made me laugh. It did make me laugh.
That is true, but we know
it's a meme.
We know that a lot of people, especially on the left, are going to take that and be like, "Oh, well, they're just like the people in South Park. They took our jobs," you know. Like,
when he said that, he could have reworded it to say, you know, we do have mass migration. Our own people are struggling to find work.
To be fair to myself, though, I was kind of speaking straight off the spot.
Yeah. And this is it. It's why it's not the biggest thing in the world, but yes, it was. Like, I think it was Damien was wise to bring that one up, but otherwise, think he did a brilliant job. To be honest, for your first time on telly, I've never done that. I've been on BBC News Online accused of being a Nazi before, but I've never actually had the opportunity to speak to them.
I'm going to be on BBC 3 soon. This morning, and Good Morning Britain's going to get back to me.
Wow.
So,
so you've inquired with them?
Yeah.
Say hi to Holly Willoughby.
I'll say, hi, Holly Willoughby, on behalf of UKIP.
You got to
mean
admit, even you've got to admit, Seb, she's pretty damn hot.
I was going to say, what you're really going to say is, hello, Holly, on behalf of a few thirsty lads from Young Independents.
There's one thirsty lad that Damien Heads is a right dirty bugger. He would like to do some sexy time.
All I will say is, like,
as long as all of you plan to marry her first.
all I will say is, like, I'm very passionately conservative in my values and what I believe in. But if Holly Willoughby asked me to join the Labour Party in order to have a relationship with her, I would probably join the Labour Party.
No,
Traitor.
please don't join the Islamic sympathisers.
Well, I dare say that I shouldn't have to tell you bros before hoes. But
Yeah, but it's Holly Willoughby.
I don't care. I don't care if it was Taylor Swift wearing a thong telling you to join her in the bedroom. You do not leave the Labour. You do not leave UKIP behind.
No. Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. Right, I'm talking like an 18-year-old Holly Willoughby, not like, you know, whichever she is now, 38 or whatever.
No, one person.
All right, so you just now confess you're a little bit weird.
There's one person who I would massively go for, right? And it got a big.
Kate Middleton.
No, Ariana Grande.
Oh
Really?
man, she does my head in. She's first of all, she looks like an alien.
Well, no, actually,
guys,
I think we've definitely understood why Sebastian's attracted to Ariana Grande. It's because she looks like a man.
What about Megan Fox?
Or Meghan Markle. Oh my god. Yes.
Oh,
I don't know. I never really got the celebrity attraction sort of thing. It's sort of like why would you get so worked up looking at steak on the television when you've got beef burgers at home? You need to what you boys need is a Cornish maid and a farm. That's what you need.
Yeah, well,
They'll treat you right. They'll treat you right.
I can definitely see something in that for sure.
Should we move on to the next topic then?
What is the next topic? I don't know what's left. You know, the thing was quickly with Zoomers. I know people hate it when I call them Zoomers, but let's face it, they are Zoomers.
They're Zoomers.
They're Zoomers. As fair play to them, they are very edgy and they are very on top of things, and I appreciate that. But what I do find a bit annoying is they do seem to be sarcastic about everything.
It's
and
true.
They do seem to criticize a lot of things.
Yes.
But not a lot of them actually go out there and do real hard-hitting stuff. That would be my only criticism of Zoomers.
I think that the reason for that is because the way that society's geared now. I mean, one of the things I noticed with universities, something that we studied in politics, was a thing called critical theory. It's essentially one of the many theories that go into the whole postmodernism intersectionality business. Critical theory is where you point out all of the problems in your society. The issue is that once you've pointed out all the problems, that's where critical theory terminates. And I actually, I was in so many different debates with people and they're going, this is wrong and that is wrong. And immigration, people bang on about immigration too much, or there's not enough funding for the NHS, or women are oppressed, or different, transgenders and things are oppressed, or this minority is oppressed and that minority is oppressed. And I'm like, okay, that's all very well and good. What are you going to do about it? And they're like, that's not my business.
Just a quick note: women aren't oppressed. They are not oppressed. They just whinging because they can't get their own way.
Well, I mean, it's not wrong.
Well, I think it's just the case that it's swung too far the other way, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, I was having a debate with a feminist the other day, and she was like, "There's not enough women MPs in Parliament." I was like, "Well, you have to stand to be an MP. You don't just get given that position." And then,
funnily enough, I was at the YI conference, and there was a woman speaker. I can't remember who she was, but she said something about, it'd be great to see more women participating.
So that's Kirsten Herriot, I believe. She's the secretary, Gerald's PA.
You mean chairman?
She's the chair. Is she the chair? All right, okay, but that's who she was.
Chairwoman.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I don't think it's a bad idea to encourage more women.
No,
I think.
Right.
No, but the thing is, right? I don't know if it was her which said this. Like, it's a shame we don't get more women. It'd be great to see more women. And like, sort of, I think maybe a few people clapped or whatever. But Terry, who was next to me, he said that's because it's a man's game, and that is true. Politics is a man's game. There's no doubting it.
So these women complain that they can't get into jobs. Well, that's because you're not applying for these jobs, and even if you don't get it, that's not because of your gender. Gender isn't about everything, It's all about qualifications, your personality, what you can bring to that job.
No, but it's all a load of rubbish anyway, because they do get offered these jobs, so that's a load of nonsense.
So
the only thing they always come up with is that women get paid less, and that's because they choose professions which pay less.
When even PewDiePie can point out that the wage gap is a myth, then you know that you've done wrong. I would say that I would support a women's group within UKIP if, at the same token, we also have a UKIP men's group. And I feel like actually having a UKIP men's group would be a tremendously good idea, because then we can actually start taking a proactive stance against the male suicide epidemic.
Yeah, definitely.
That's just my thoughts on the matter. I'm more than happy to let women have their own group and let them talk about women's rights and things like that. That's fine. But there's 84 men a week killing themselves in this country. And I would like UKIP to take a very proactive stance in dealing with that. Especially someone like Seb and I both suffer from anxiety and depression and whatnot. Probably many other men do within UKIP and particularly within YI. And I think that if we have a special interest group for men as much as women, then they can talk about representation and things like that as much as they please, and we can actually do our bit to encourage party policy that saves lives.
Bring something a bit personal, but I'm not going to lie. I do actually find it really difficult to talk about, anxiety and depression, because of the stigma that if you talk about your feelings, then you're not a man.
Yeah.
Now, I'm gonna tell you something really personal here. I've actually tried to kill myself twice because of depression. Now, I don't feel I can talk to someone about that because of the stigma on men.
Yeah.
I think it does really be talked about, because who knows, if I actually did go through it, I would not be sat here today.
Yeah.
And it's only a few mates who deeply care about me, who have taught me out of it. But then again, it's not just about your friends. It's about going to professionals who are not judging you. But every time I do go to a sort of professional, I do feel like I'm being judged because of it.
Yeah. Well, if I was going to say if I might open up in that regard as well. So specifically about going to talk to a professional. So most people don't know in Young Independents. I don't really tout it very much, but I actually suffer from psoriasis, which is a skin-related thing. It's essentially leprosy. Your skin comes out in scabs and scars and things like that, and they don't know quite what causes it, but it's generally associated with stress. And I developed it because at the beginning of my second year of university, a dear friend of mine attempted to kill herself twice in as many months. And she didn't go to get help, and I was the only one. I felt like I was the only one trying to help her. And as a result of that, I was mentally fatigued. I developed psoriasis, anxiety, and depression really kicked into gear. I contemplated taking my own life once or twice. And it got to the point where I had a nervous breakdown on the high street of one of the local towns. And I called up my mum, and she demanded that I went in to see the GP then and there. So I booked in an appointment and I went and saw them. I now, as a result of that, have to live with a very embarrassing skin condition for the rest of my life. And I'll be having to spend money on that kind of medication because you can't get rid of psoriasis. It can go into remission, but it will never go away. And as a result of that, my mental health suffered. My relationship with God took a massive hit in that time. I actually, for 3 months, was addicted to cocaine. I was taking cocaine just about every day, so I could have the confidence to go outside and talk to people. I was drinking a phenomenal amount, taking a phenomenal amount of drugs, and the only way that I got locked out of that lifestyle was because I was out on the town with some guys and I was coked up. And a girl I knew from the Christian Union was actually out on the club as well, which I thought was very entertaining. And she said, a little birdie tells me you've been taking cocaine. And I was like, well, I'll level with you. I'm coked up now. And she just said, do you honestly think that's what Jesus has in mind for your life? And I wept like a child. It was almost like I'd suddenly realized what had been going on. I mean, it's really embarrassing. I was there with a couple of my mates in the car park opposite the club going, I should be better than this. God wants me to be better than this. And it was really embarrassing, really quite mortifying. But after that, I mean, I'm over 2 years clean now. It's still a struggle, man. I'll level with you. So if you ever want to talk about it, Seb, or anybody else who listens to this and why I want to chat about it, like, we know, and we need to have an honest conversation about it. Because, I mean, here's a random one. I believe that toxic masculinity exists.
Well, yeah.
And the reason why I say that I believe that it exists is because modern masculinity and biblical masculinity are two very different things. So modern masculinity encourages you to be this kind of alpha male figure that doesn't feel pain, doesn't show emotion, just plugs on, does what he wants. Actually, what that creates is a very negative masculine image that makes you two-dimensional, made out of stone. And what happens when you're made out of stone, if you apply enough pressure, is you crack and you break. And that's not healthy. The biblical view for men is to be, yes, strong and defensive, to look after the things and the people that you love, but it is also to be gentle and to be generous and to be kind and loving. And that model of masculinity is something that I think in this country we need to take much more on board. Because if we started to say to men, no, actually, you can be more sensitive about things, you can talk about things more, and you can open yourself up to be gentle, then maybe, just maybe, we might be able to break through to these 84 men who are killing themselves every week. We can start to bring those numbers down, and we can start to encourage them that there is a way out of those situations that doesn't involve drugs, it doesn't involve alcohol, and it certainly doesn't involve taking yourself out of the world.
Well, yeah, definitely. This is something which there's definitely territory to be gained here, not politically, but just for the good of humanity.
Society.
Because the thing with what a lot of the people on the left do is they sacrifice men's rights and well-being for the sake of the altar of feminism, and they like to call it as the rights of women, but really it's women being prioritized over men, which I personally see as wrong.
Like relationships, the man is seen to be provide everything, have a good job, have a car, have stable finances. And women,
we're the ones who are supposed to have our crap together.
Women won't give you, a second look if you don't have that. And that that's another big crisis in our society, which no one really talks about. Is so men are expected to be the providers, be the rational ones who get everything done on time, well, and everything, right? Women have been told to get into the workplace and not to stay at home or any of this stuff. This is actually because there's more people in the workforce now, because more women are in the workforce competing against men. It's actually lessening the value of men in terms of their income and their place as providers in the family.
Well, it's actually it's a strange one. So here's another fun personal story. When my girlfriend and I started dating, I was actually technically homeless. I had no money. Last year I spent 5 months living in box rooms of friends. For a while, my postal address was actually the pub that I worked in, because I didn't have a fixed address. When me and my girlfriend started seeing each other, I had no money. Actually, I remember quite embarrassingly on our second date, I went to buy a drink in front of her and a few friends, and my card bounced.
Wow.
And so, I mean, like, if we didn't approach that relationship as Christians approach that relationship, there would have been nothing stopping her from just going, you ain't what I need, you ain't what I want, off you go. As it was, instead, for some reason, I still don't understand quite why, to this day, she decided to stick with me and stick it out. And as it is now, this is a flat that I own with a friend. We both rent it out together.
Okay.
I've got a stable job. I'm making more money than I've ever made before. Everything's looking up, and if it wasn't for the fact that people like my girlfriend decided to stick by me, or people from a church, for two months of that time, I was living with people from church. I had a week to get out of where I'd been living, and I reached out to them like last ditch thing. Can you help me? And they said, we weren't going to, but yeah, we'll put you up for a week, for as long as you need in our house. And they was taken in by a family who didn't really know me. And yeah, they kept me from going out on the street. So I think, when you approach a relationship or you approach any of these things from a more biblical mindset, then the heart of people is more inclined to show through. Well, because ultimately what will end up happening otherwise is you get people who just go, I'm just going to abandon you because you're not what I need. And that leaves people feeling lonely.
Well, it's like I was just on on Tinder. I was looking. You might laugh, but there's a guy on there, and he said, "Well, if you have a car, that will get my attention more." And I was like, "Well, what about my personality? You don't know me."
You're going to say something else then.
But it's like, he's more interested if I had a car or not, rather than me as a person. And that kind of shows you now that unless you have, the finer things in life, you won't get that relationship that you need.
It does. It goes back to what we started the podcast with, which is it does seem like people seem to be a bit more materialistic these days, and it seems like we're sort of losing a great sense of meaning of life other than materialistic things.
Well, so actually, this is one of the things that really draws me, to bring it back to UKIP, I guess, that really draws me to UKIP. Gerard Batten has quite often said that we exist to be a populist party. We're against big banks and big business on one hand, but also against big government and socialism on the other. What that leaves in the middle. So that's why I would describe myself as a Christian Democrat. What that leaves in the middle is, we say that we support small businesses. Well, what are small businesses? They're butchers, bakers, they're corner shops, they're community businesses. They're the things that keep a community going. Ultimately, if we can't support our communities and that we can't support our community businesses, I think that UKIP has the opportunity to say, not only do we stand for the people, we stand for communities, right? And we encourage the rebuilding of communities. If we could see UKIP, getting behind, community drives, community organizations. So I'm also the chairman for Young Independents in Cornwall, and I need to still sort a few things out in getting people's contact details and whatever. But the first thing I want to do is actually start to tackle the homelessness crisis in parts of Cornwall, particularly Camborne in my constituency where I'm branch chairman, but also Falmouth where I live. I want to essentially do everything in our power to go, if we are a people's party, a genuine populist people's party, we need to start looking out for these people.
Well, just on that point, relating to Wigan, Wigan was once, a big thriving market town, and Wigan Council, funnily enough, are raising the prices, for rent.
Yeah.
And these people cannot afford it.
No.
So now, like Outdoor Market Square, there's only one business person trading, and that's like a butcher van. And then if you go inside the actual market hall, there's a lot of empty stalls.
Well, taxes and rents are just far too high.
Well,
and
exactly. In the last 2 years, Cornwall Council has, I think it's 2 or 3 years, Cornwall Council has raised council tax by 10%.
Yeah.
It's nonsense. Why do they do it? They're just going to be closing shops down if they do that. I don't know why they do it, because it's not beneficial to them.
It's also because the Conservative government has been slashing the amount of money that goes back to local authorities. And I think that actually the way to deal with that whole crisis is you restore local powers to local authorities as it was before Thatcher became Prime Minister. And I can understand the reason why she took those powers away. She was in a standoff with lots of Labour councils, particularly Labour councils in the north, who were essentially able to do their own thing. The thing was, she saw that as a threat to Westminster's authority, because then you also had local authorities that were conservative or liberal, and they were just saying, well, actually, no, we're going to do our own thing as well. And because they wouldn't answer when she said, rise and go and do my bidding, she crushed their powers as local authorities. I think that the easiest way to make sure that money stays in these local authorities so we don't need to up council tax or increase the amount that goes down from Westminster is to just let these councils and unitary authorities and municipal corporations and all things like that, let them keep the money that they generate.
Well, it's like Wigan Council have which is a heavily Labour safety, to say the least. But they promised, right, to freeze council tax, and they raised it. So I was like, well, this is just proving the point that Labour lie.
Yeah, and so I mean, ultimately, I think one of the keystones of my own political philosophy is it's a concept called subsidiarity, which is a bit of a nonsense word. Nobody really knows what it means. What it means is power should be distributed to the smallest necessary implement of power, which means that obviously, St Parish Council is not going to have a say on the national defence budget, right? Yeah. But it will do things like it will determine housing policy for that parish. It will determine rates for businesses. It will determine council tax and things like that. Those are the things that it should be dealing with. So it should deal with those things and keep any money that's raised from it. Then you scale up to town councils, city councils, county councils, regional authorities, and then finally Westminster. But all of those things should only have the amount of power that is fitting an authority of that size. So when you get into these instances where Westminster is taking away money from local authorities, which is then leading to local authorities raising council tax because they can't cope, that's terrible. What should instead be happening is that those local authorities shouldn't be sending any money up to Westminster, and they should be dedicating it to their own communities.
Yeah,
because then we're seeing instances where local authorities are closing community centres. I mean, it's one of the biggest things that's causing the knife crime epidemic in big cities now that nobody likes to talk about. To save money, because the government's been slashing a lot of the money that goes back to local authorities, they're having to close down community centres, which is taking kids off the streets.
Yeah.
It's keeping them out of gangs. And now, because these community centres have been closed down, they're going into gangs. So they're going out stabbing each other. Well, they're going out and rioting. They're going out and looting. And you're wondering why we're in such a desperate situation as it is.
Like in Wigan, we have something called the Wigan Youth Zone. Now, basically, that was meant to be for all ages. It's not. There's nothing there for teenagers. Yes, it does have sessions for teenagers, but they do nothing. Literally, the only activities they have on is for the younger people. And they said, "Oh yeah, it does incorporate everyone of all ages," and I was like, "Well, where are the classes? How to get a job, how to cook, how to take care of yourself." But you go into this youth zone from I think it's from 6 till 9, and they just hang out with their friends. It's not really doing any sort of good. No,
well, the gap between adolescence and gaining adulthood in terms of a solid job and really making your place in the world is too wide. Not enough people are told important life lessons. A lot of people just have to muddle through and work it out themselves. Yeah. Really, we should have a solid foundation in schools like we have with the grammar school system and things like that, where kids are told, this is how the world works, and this is where you could find your place, and this is how it should be. This is how it used to be.
When I joined the Army Cadet Force, that had taught me, more than I've learned at school how to on my own. if I didn't go to cadets and learn how to iron, polish, taking care of money, taking care of personal kit, I would not be,
half the man you are today.
Yes, the army made me who I was. The mobile infantry made me the man I am today.
It's like, yes, I'll be still living on my own, but I wouldn't be doing it so well. Like, I do. I iron everything. I cook myself. I've been doing it from when I started. Now, these younger people who do go to school, they don't learn crap, and the cadet forces might not interest them, which is fair enough because it's not for everyone.
Yeah.
However, we should be implementing programs to engage these younger people to actually be more independent rather than letting their mum do everything for them. And once their mum goes and dies or whatever, God forbid, but it will happen eventually. They won't have 2 feet to stand on. They won't know where to start.
And
Yes.
so that's one of the things as well that I've noticed as well is that families are, because the government is now dictating everything that's going on through education and whatnot like that. Nobody is encouraging families to actually be good parents.
Exactly.
So I was very lucky. Now my parents are an older generation than most. I had children fairly late, and I was very lucky that before I went to university, they made sure, can I cook? Yes, they made sure that I could cook. And they made sure that I could do little things. Can I do the washing up? Can I reset a fuse box if the power blows? Can I change a vacuum cleaner filter? Can I change a light bulb? Things like that. Just tiny little things, because I'm far from competent. And my missus will tell anyone that I'm the least competent man in the world. But when I went to university, I was there living with in my first year house with a couple of people from fairly well-to-do backgrounds, and they didn't know how to do anything for themselves. And it was like, there'd be too many people with electronic things going, and it was an old house, so the power would trip. And all you'd have to do is reset the fuse box. They're like, and I'd be like, all right, calm down. Like, boom, 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 click, 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 sorted. And they're like, how did you do that? I was like, I don't know. Didn't your parents teach you how to reset a fuse box? Like, they didn't teach me anything. It's like, I don't know if it's the same with any of you guys when you're at university campuses or whatever. There's always that one story of the kid on campus who forgets to put water in his pasta to boil it, and sets the fire alarms off. It's like that's what's happening. It's because the parents aren't teaching their kids how to do basic things.
Are you aware of the phenomenon of helicopter parenting?
Yes.
I'm
very lucky that I didn't have it.
It's basically exactly what you're talking about. And I think this is happening all up and down the country to a massive scale, where we have a lot of middle-class parents, mostly middle class, but also some working class as well, who are literally doing everything for their kids, that they grew up and they're feral. They're not capable of looking after themselves and being fully responsible adults, responsible for their own actions. And it's actually a bit of a crisis, because a lot of these people actually think that they know how to do better for the world as well, and they end up joining Labour.
Yeah, well, there's
it's like with technology, kids these days are more interested in what's happening on their social media, talking to the friends, instead of learning life skills. And that's the problem. We need to impose some strict parenting. Well,
no, we can't impose stricter parenting, can we?
Well, the parents need to be more strict and say, right, get off your phone, and then we're going to show you how to do this.
Well, so the way that's done is to essentially encourage communities, because if you have parents, instead of like parents operating like autonomous units, you have them involved in churches and community groups and things like that, where then there are guidelines of how you behave as a parent, and there's. I mean, to call it a shame dynamic, I guess, is a pretty callous way of putting it. But if people know that there are other people sort of essentially judging them on how they do, then that actually encourages the general well-being of the group. I mean, so there's a really, really callous point as to why helicopter parenting exists, and it's because people are having fewer children. The irony being, sort of back in the day when sort of having 5 to 8 children was considered the norm. You couldn't keep your eye on 5 to 8 children. So, probably one of them would do themselves a mischief and end up dying or whatever like that. And it was a pretty like run business, but ultimately because kids were encouraged to fend for themselves because a parent couldn't have eyes in the back of their head, they ended up learning more for themselves. They ended up becoming self-sufficient through their own education, with also then stern parenting being able to teach lessons. These days, people are having children later on in life, and they're only having one, which means that they dote on them, right?
And can I also add to that? I think there's also a cultural phenomenon of the previous generation to our parents' generation, where they were, I think, more stricter and traditional and things like that. And I think our parents' generation have felt like, you know, David Bowie, George Michael, we're going to rebel against that strict traditional nature. We're the cool parents, and that's also a big mistake. Which I
think in regards to cool parents, I mean, I think you'd find this very entertaining. So my grandparents are very straight-laced, middle-class Kentish people. You know, very, very. You know, my granddad drove a Jag to work and everything like that. My dad was the black sheep of the family. Now, you wouldn't recognize my dad if you put him up against me. We have the same gigantic ears, but that's about it. So my dad has a beard, a ponytail, covered in tattoos, wears combat boots and camo trousers. My dad is a biker.
Right.
My dad never used to ride with the Hells Angels, but he used to fight with them at biker rallies and things like that. That's the sort of thing that my dad spent the 80s doing.
Hard man kind of thing.
Well, the thing is, he's a very mild-mannered gentleman with lots of very strong moral convictions, and that's where I learned a lot from. I idolize my dad, I really, really do. But he obviously has come from that sort of free love, sort of do what you want, do what you feel kind of thing. Obviously, I've been very lucky because he does have those moral convictions that carries with him. But then, obviously, you get somebody like me. What was the way that I rebelled against my parents? I started going to church, and I started looking, you know, for a stable job and a family. You know,
well, hopefully, it swings the other way back from that. But
if my kid becomes a hippie, he's going to get locked in the coal shed. I swear.
Well, you need to confess that to God first. Be approved.
Can I just do it, since we're talking about since we've been talking a lot about family in the communities, can I give a shout out to Alan Craig, who is the spokesperson for families and
big love to Alan Craig. Big love. I was actually on the phone with him a few days ago. So I love that man to pieces. And in fact, actually, from another UKIP member from Northern Ireland, they sent me. I'll try and find it. It's a little booklet from. Where are you? There it is. Oh no, that's not it. Maybe it's over here. Maybe I've moved it.
Maybe if you cleaned your bedroom and took responsibility,
I'll have you know this room is the tidiest that it's ever been. I'm currently looking through my ring binder of political goodies because I think every good and astute politician should have a bag of political goodies.
You will know about immigration. I'm sure I've got a leaflet on that in here somewhere.
I've got a leaflet about damn near everything, son. I'm meticulous. There we go. It's a leaflet from, and I will shamelessly plug Alan Craig's group because I'm a fanboy of his. It's only a cheeky little thing, but it's from Support for the Family. And yeah, it talks. So let me think. Let's look at this here. The transgender delusion is on the front page. Transgender is totalitarian is the name of the article inside. It was written by an Alan Williams. And on the back is abortion on demand. So Support for the Family is a UKIP special interest group campaigning for traditional family values. If you would like to get involved, see our website, supportforthefamily.org. Now, it's a very boomer website. It's a very old school website.
Oh, boomer.
It is a good read. But yeah, so it's got a little thing for a quote from Alan Craig's 24th of March Kipper Central article from 2018. And yeah, so big love to Support for the Family. Also big love for the Christian Special Interest Group that's going to be starting soon. I'm going to be one of the movers and shakers behind that alongside Jonathan Wood and a few other people. So keep your eyes peeled for that because we bring in Jesus back, boy.
Jesus is coming back. with a vengeance.
Jesus 2 Electric Boogaloo, otherwise known as the second coming of Christ.
You know what? Have you seen Alan Craig's speech from Durham, which is on
Yes,
the
I
UKIP?
was listening to it today. Incredible. The
Wasn't
man
it
gets
great,
so
yeah.
passionate. I love it. The man just you can tell like he's brimming with rage at what Labour has done to them.
I love the way he started the speech, and he said, I'm the spokesman for families and children. I run this group. We believe in traditional family values. We believe that a man is a man. And what did he say?
He said, we believe that a father should be a man.
That's I agree with him. Father should be a man. And a mother should be a woman.
Yeah,
very controversial these days.
And he said, and children should either be male or female, and everybody's like, yeah. I was like, yes, I appreciate that.
To a bunch of transgender people, wow, he would probably get killed and be like, "Did you get to see my gender?"
Yes, I did. Are you trying to assume my gender? How dare you not realise I actually identify as an attack helicopter?
Yeah, but we love Alan Craig. He's really good.
Look at Bolton. He's
our man.
He was brilliant. Like,
yeah,
everyone just applauded him, and it's actually word cannot describe how great.
Well, you did a great job at Bolton as well, Seb. You did a really, really cracking job.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and in fact, I think the Durham one was even bigger than the Bolton.
It was.
one.
It was by about another 100 people or something like that.
Yeah, so
I think that's a good metric, because then that means that probably by the end of spring we'll have 1,000 people meeting somewhere.
Yeah, if we can just steadily up the rate each time, and then by the time we make it to where else is big up north, once we're at Manchester, we want to have like a full arena.
Manchester, Rotherham, Rochdale,
Wigan,
Newcastle, Wigan. There's so many places that we can reach. Obviously, I would love it if one day they came down to Cornwall, and they did a talk at bloody Heartlands in Camborne, or the Hall for Cornwall, or somewhere like that, or even so where we run our outfit. So here's a fun fact about Cornish UKIP. We actually are allied with. So you guys remember the Liberal Party, right? Not the Liberal Democrats, the old school Liberal Party.
I don't.
So they're still going, and they're friends of ours because they support Brexit. And they have a hall in Camborne that can seat about 140 people. And it's got a little cafe as well that seats 30. The new Liberal Hall in Camborne is previously a Salvation Army. They're called citadels. They're basically the Salvation Army version of a cathedral. And it's now owned by the Liberal Party down there because they're still going. And we work alongside them. And at a very reasonable rate, they let UKIP, Camborne, Redruth and Hale run all of their meetings out of there. So we had a big, lovely bring and share dinner with about 50 people there in February. The day before my birthday, actually, was quite nice. And then on Thursday night we had an open committee meeting there where anybody was allowed to come along. It was big love to the old school Liberal Party, because also we don't stand candidates against each other in local elections, but they always support us in national and European ones.
All right.
So, big love to my boys in the Liberal Party.
That's good. We can have a bit of solidarity with some people at least.
Always. It's like I get on really well with the chairman of For Britain in Cornwall. I'm just trying to convince him to leave Anne-Marie Waters' gang and come back home,
Yeah, that's what we want to see. That's what we want to see. Okay, well, I think we can wrap this podcast up. I keep calling it a podcast, but I guess it's a stream.
It's the Kipper stream. It's loose kippers.
Yeah,
Kippers gone wild.
I think we can wrap up this stream, I should say. We've learned a lot today. We've learned about Christianity, family, traditional values, communities, and of course salsa dancing, which is another fantastic part of
it's
learning about the world.
It should be mandatory. Should definitely be mandatory.
Mandatory salsa dancing.
UKIP policy. Anybody who doesn't go to salsa dancing classes gets gulagged.
I'm calling it now. Mandatory salsa dancing and subsidised Freddos. Vote UKIP.
Amen.
Okay, I will bid you fellas adieu, but stay on the
Goodbye,
line
boys.
because we can have a little chat.
Right on.
See you later.
Cheers.